Broadcasting to you on WNN 1470 AM and TrentoVision.tv from the world's leading think tank laboratory, buried deep in an undisclosed building in hostile territory where evil and corruption is exposed. You're about to enter the Tom Trento Show.
All in flag and battle, thank you.
Tom Trento heads United West, a group that says it defends Western civilization against the onslaught of Islam.
Boy, oh boy, does it suck to be CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, today on Monday, September 23, 2013. You know, sometimes you eat the bear, but sometimes, how you like this? Sometimes the bear eats CAIR, you know? And on this day, mark it down, on this Monday, September 23, 2013, this organization, Council on American Islamic Relations, is running into a,
Buzzsaw?
a buzzsaw, an entangle, what a wicked web we weave. We have a fascinating show, folks, and welcome to TrentoVision. Tom Trento, your host. What is that noise I keep hearing, that motor running up there?
I don't know.
Oh, is it this thing? Yeah. We have a fascinating show today for you and a very, very special guest. Full disclosure, our guest, who will be with us momentarily, is a friend and a colleague, one of the authors of Shariah, The Threat to America, the book that 19 of us put together. And this particular individual is one of the world's foremost authorities on the Islamic doctrine of jurisprudence, Shariah, an attorney in his own right. And just a day or so ago, his organization produced a post which said, this CAIR organization, Council on American Islamic Relations, they wrote this extensive report on Islamophobia, legislating fear in the United States. Well, maybe when you live in a glass house, a glass home, you should be real careful about throwing stones. What you're going to see today, folks, and right now I'd like everybody to send an email, a text, phone call to your friends, have them tune in just a couple of minutes after 5 o'clock. Our special guest will be here in a couple of minutes, so you won't miss anything. On Monday the 23rd, 2013, have them watch this show. They can watch on TrentoVision.tv on the computer. They can watch on theunitedwest.org. They can watch on teapartycommunity.com. They can listen on WNN 1470 radio in South Florida, big 50,000 watt station, or they can go to iHeartRadio, the little application on your phone, and listen on WNN 1470. That's our flagship AM radio station. You got to kill this thing, yeah. Our flagship radio station, and we're hitting a lot of people driving in their automobiles, people worldwide on the internet through TrentoVision.tv. And this is an expose, and this is part 2. We started on Monday, part 1, expose on the Council on American Islamic Relations. And we're shutting that annoying little noise that was there. It's a fan we use in our nice, cool studio, but I turned it on. I put it on the wrong setting, actually, and it was like a hurricane coming in here. But in any event, please notify your friends to watch and listen to the show. And I'd like to bring on our guest. Is he with us, by the way? Mark, is he with us?
Yes, he is.
Okay, let's bring on David Yerushalmi, my good friend and colleague. Hi, David. How are you?
Good.
Well, let's do this first, because notwithstanding the fact from those who are Sharia compliant and maybe not in the counter-jihad camp that we are in, you are one of the most vile people on the face of the earth. They keep pronouncing your name either Yerushalmi or Yerushalmi? Let's settle this for once
Is
and
it
all.
Qatar or Qatar?
Yeah, Qatar or Qatar. How do you pronounce
Neither.
your name?
Well, it's interesting. I assumed you were teasing and kind of playing the CAIR advocate with the pronunciation. The name is pronounced as it is spelled, Yerushalmi.
Yerushalmi. Okay, good.
Pronounce it Italian. You'll
Yeah,
feel
in Italian.
Yerushalmi.
Yes.
Yerushalmi.
Yerushalmi. The accent on the end. Yes, you are not well liked by those in the camp that would like to supplant the U.S. Constitution with
That's correct.
the Quran. We all know that. But let's get right into the meat of today's show, which is an expose. I don't know, David, I read your article, I've read the Daily Caller. The Daily Caller, the Washington publication, did a fascinating analysis of the tangled web of, it's nothing other than money laundering, but I had a very difficult time following what the heck CAIR was doing and how they were doing it, particularly in light of the fact that, I run a C3 organization, and we keep our books pristine, we do all our filings, and we follow all the laws. This thing seems to be so out of control and like nobody cares. Sketch it out for the audience, David, and tell us what's going on with the Council on American Islamic Relations and their Chinese laundromat money laundering operation.
Right. The difficulty, anytime you're describing a criminal money laundering operation, is that they create a Byzantine labyrinth of organizations and accounts in order to hide the criminal activities that they're engaged in. So what I want to try to do is keep it simple, and then I'll let you direct me down into the weeds to the extent that there's some legitimate questions out there. And there's a lot, because we don't know everything that CAIR is doing, and I don't believe that CAIR knows everything that it's doing. But here's the bottom line. CAIR has created several organizations, one of which is a 501c3. And as a 501c3, meaning an IRS-recognized charitable organization that's only allowed a very limited amount of opportunity to do any lobbying, and must report all donors who give more than $5,000 to them in any annual period. They must report that to the IRS. Now, that information about the 5,000 plus donors is a private disclosure to the IRS. You can't find it online, even though you can find the 990 financial reporting to the IRS by charities. You can't actually get your hands on the names of the 5,000 plus givers unless you're engaged in litigation, as we were with CAIR and still are.
Okay, well, let's hold it there for a second. This is new information for our viewers and listeners. And we have today at 8 minutes after 5 o'clock, David Yerushalmi with us. And as I said at the outset, a friend and a colleague. He is with American Freedom Law Center, a First Amendment firm that he and Rob Muse, his partner, started a couple of years ago to represent individuals in First Amendment cases and civil rights cases, all individuals, whoever wants to contract with them. But I think before you even started that organization, you had an ongoing litigation against CAIR. You just introduced that. For the sake of the viewers and the listeners, what is the background with you having litigation against Council on American Islamic Relations?
Well, I've been operating through my, as it were, regular law firm practice in the national security, public policy arena, constitutional law arena for some time. And as you know, I'm general counsel to Frank Gaffney's Center for Security Policy. And in that context, we had developed information that CAIR was hiring fraudulent lawyers who were claiming to represent the typically Muslim victims of discrimination and filing lawsuits on their behalf, when in fact their lawyers were not lawyers. And when it was uncovered that they weren't lawyers and they weren't actually filing lawsuits on behalf of the so-called CAIR clients, We were retained by 5 of these clients to sue CAIR for fraud, racketeering, breach of fiduciary duty, intentional infliction of emotional distress. And then that lawsuit was filed in federal court in Washington, D.C.
What year was that, David? What year was that filed?
Originally, it was filed in 2008. It was refiled in slightly different fashion in 2010.
Okay.
And currently, we've gone through all the discovery. We had to go before the court month after month, compelling CAIR to actually provide the disclosure the law requires them. They were sanctioned by the court, warned about referrals to the bar because of the behavior of their in-house lawyer. They were typically despicable CAIR. And currently that litigation is now in front of the judge, and he's going to decide to what extent CAIR is liable, and then we will have a trial on the damages. In that case, what we uncovered were tax records and other corporate documents that suggested that CAIR was operating through several entities to hide the fact that they were receiving millions of dollars from overseas. Now, there was a second piece of litigation, which is related to the first, in which CAIR sued Dave and Chris Gaubatz, my client, Center for Security Policy, an organization I was affiliated with at one point, the Society of Americans for National Existence, and even named me as a defendant, when they discovered that Chris Gaubatz had been an intern on a documentary project by the Center for Security Policy, which uncovered even more evidence of crimes. And that internship, of course, famously resulted in a book published by Dave Gaubatz and Mr. Sperry by WorldNet Daily called The Muslim Mafia. And CAIR sued to get those documents back and for damages in the millions of dollars, etc. Well, that case went through a couple years of discovery as well.
Wow.
And we deposed all the major players. Nihad Awad.
Wait, you actually deposed the infamous Nihad Awad, who in October 1993 was in a hotel in Philadelphia that was conveniently being wiretapped by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And in that meeting in October 1993, there was collusion to form some sort of organization that would destabilize the recently passed Oslo Accords in September of 1993, and subsequent to the Philadelphia meeting where Nihad Awad, who you say you deposed, subsequent to that, an organization called CAIR, Council on American Islamic Relations, is birthed. That's the same Nihad Awad that you deposed personally?
It is. And what's interesting is that when we deposed this character, we asked him about his creating this organization called the Council on American Islamic Relations, Inc. in 1994. And then we simply wanted him to walk us through its history. And what we found out in the deposition, and it's actually provided in the Daily Caller article, the actual transcript, the relevant portions, we asked him, how did the Council on American Islamic Relations become a new organization called the Council on American Islamic Relations Action Network, Inc.?
Right.
And how did this other organization, which was actually the 501c3, CAIR Foundation, come into existence? What was the relationship between the two, the financial ties? And in testimony under oath, he essentially conceded he had no idea. What this amounts to, though, and this is what tipped us to this money laundering scheme. In the course of that litigation, they had to provide us even more tax documentation. We also filed a FOIA with the IRS, which gave us more information. Here's what we know. CAIR gets tiny donations, literally tiny donations from domestic Muslims. Amounts to tens of thousands a year. They have a budget of late to the tune of $2.5 to $3.5 million a year.
Wow.
In 2011, for example, they had a budget of about $3 million. They spent only the income of $3 million. They spent only about $1 million on their projects, and they pocketed $2 million.
Wow.
Now, what have they historically done with this money? They buy up real estate around Washington, D.C. They rent it out and make even more money. Now, what happens to all this money? Well, it's never clear. Why? Because the original CAIR, founded in 1994 by Nihad Awad and Omar Ahmed, that organization essentially is now a for-profit corporation that only has to report the amount of income. It does not have to report the source of income. Very important. So CAIR is now getting these millions of dollars from overseas, from the Gulf, and we have a list of them, and we've provided it to Trento TV so they can actually provide it to the audience. Listing of the Embassy of the UAE, Qatar,
right here they are.
Saudi Arabian entities.
Well, hang on, David, hang on. Right now, at 16 minutes after 5 o'clock on Monday, the 23rd. Folks, as I said at the outset, and if you're at home or you're looking on your iPads or iPhones, you see a document. I'm going to read the numbers in a second that David is referencing. As I said at the outset, sometimes it just sucks to be CAIR, and this is one of those days. Put that back up, please, Mark.
Okay.
This is a document found in discovery. And I know the listeners and viewers may not be able to follow all of this because that's the intent. When you run a money laundering scam, you want to make it extremely difficult for anybody to follow. But right here we have a document where Adnan Hamzi Bogheri from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, made a little donation to CAIR.
Just a little small donation.
Now, I don't know who he made it to. We're going to ask David. But he made a $600,000 donation. This is an individual, it's marked person, from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Now, that's not chicken scratch. When you give somebody 600 large, usually there's a quid pro quo in the world I grew up in. Now, the next one underneath that, Mark, put that one back up. David is referencing this.
That was from the UAE Embassy in Washington, D.C.
Right.
The UAE Embassy.
That would be United Arab Emirates.
Right.
How much was that little ditty for?
Oh, almost $720.
No. $219,563.
Oh, okay.
But
There's a line through
they
the
still mark it
screen
as
there.
a person, though it came from the embassy. That's
Yeah.
interesting. And then this next one is great. This one is from the Kingdom Holding Company.
The kingdom
Now, as a
itself.
Christian, we use the word kingdom for God's heaven.
I don't think that's what they
I
mean.
don't think
That's not
so.
that one.
Kingdom Holding Company in Saudi Arabia. Again, a person, $199,000.
$199,980. $199,980.
I wonder how they come up with these numbers.
What's
Well,
the
there's-
last one on there, Mark? I can't see it.
The last one is the National Bank of FUGAIRAH in Fujairah, UAE. However you pronounce that. I'm not sure about
And how much is that one?
$100,000. Just a small donation.
And what's the next one? The Red
Yeah, they're
Crescent?
getting smaller
Yeah,
now.
they're getting smaller. We're going from big
Okay.
to
The Red
little.
Crescent,
The Red
that's
Crescent,
the
yeah.
Islamic Red Cross, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because
99
the Red Cross needs to be giving money out,
Abu
right?
Dhabi.
Now, 99,985. But I think the next donation is quite interesting. CAIR California.
Oh,
CAIR.
we deal with them all the time, actually.
CAIR California gave a donation to CAIR for $99,000.
Very interesting. David, we are not forensic accountants here at TrentoVision, but you and your team that discovered this information in discovery for, sounds like a multiple series of lawsuits, litigation against CAIR. What is the gist of this over $1 million here easily? What does this mean?
And what we know is that $1 million is actually $3 million, $3.5 million on a pretty annualized basis. What happens? Think of this organization right here in my right hand as CAIR Foundation, a C3. CAIR Foundation has to report any donation over $5,000 to the IRS. It's important because we don't want charitable organizations being fed money from illicit sources or foreign sovereigns, in which they will be doing the foreign sovereign's business in the name of charitable work as opposed to lobbying. Now think of this organization as that original CAIR founded in 1994, which is now just a regular corporation. It has to report total income, but it doesn't have to report sources. What happens? Any of these people writes a check to the charity or to the for-profit corporation. Who do they write a check to?
CAIR, same
They
thing
write it
either
to
way.
CAIR, C-A-I-R. Both of these organizations have a bank account with the same name.
Right.
Well, actually,
CAIR
Let him
decides
finish.
which bank account they're going to put the money in. If it's a small donation from a
Right.
little Muslim in Texas, well, they'll declare it on the
Yeah.
CAIR Foundation. If it's a
Right.
big check, they want to hide because they're doing the biddings of the UAE embassy. Who are they going to give that money to? To the for-profit corporation.
Well,
The for-profit
Hang on, hang on.
corporation is then going to transfer it to the foundation. And how does the foundation, the charitable organization, report that money? It came from CAIR.
right.
They've hid the fact that they're acting as a foreign agent, which is illegal if you're not registered, and they've disguised the source of the funds of an international transfer, which is also money laundering.
Well, how did you and your team get your hands on these documents if this is information that doesn't have to be reported?
Because in the course of the two federal litigations, what we had to do, we would ask for all of their financial records because they were relevant. They would refuse to give them. We'd go to court and say it's relevant for this reason, that reason, and this reason. Please compel them to turn it over. The court would rule and say you must turn it over. They'd say, well, Your Honor, this is all part of attorney-client privilege communications. Or we don't have it. And we would then have to force them to turn over all of their records to the court to do an special in-camera inspection before we get to look at it. And the court, in other words, every step of the way we had to fight. Now, we had another advantage, of course. When Chris Gaubatz was in CAIR, he walked out with a lot of documents. And so we had the opportunity in the course of this litigation to see every document that Chris Gaubatz removed from CAIR. And we could compare what they produced in discovery with what Chris had actually had available to him while he was interning. That allowed us a kind of forensic,
Analysis. Yep.
to get into the worms and the of their the CAIR can, as it were.
All right, now, so you were able to, I mean, this must be driving Nihad Awad and Corey Saylor and Ibrahim Hooper. By the way, David, on our show, we deal with national security issues, Obama issues, Israel issues, but we like to have a little fun. We make jihad fun. And in doing that, we've called Ibrahim Hooper, who's the spokesperson for CAIR, several times live, and he always seems to hang up on us when we ask him a question.
You're
I
not a
wonder why.
legitimate news source.
Yeah. So you must be driving these guys crazy. This is not information, certainly this organization that stands in an unindicted capacity in another federal case. We'd like you to comment on that for a second. You've tied in, you've done the work that the FBI normally in their
Yes.
forensic analysis of money laundering, of fraud, of tax evasion, all of that they do. I know Representative Frank Wolf has been calling for some sort of investigation. So let's bring this together for our viewers and our listeners at 24 minutes after 5 o'clock on the 23rd of Monday. Bad day for CAIR. Let's bring this together and tell the folks about the unindicted status of CAIR in regards to another federal trial where there's convictions, and the unindicted conspirator category of Nihad Awad, the guy that
He just did this big rollout on this report about Islamophobia in the United States, and yoo-hoo,
Yeah,
who paid? Yeah, who first
The
of all,
funding of it.
who paid for that? I wonder if it came from those foreign donors. And then he stands up in front of all these cameras, in front of the media, and a
Holier
couple
than
of
thou.
days later, like he's so pure, and now we find out that he's
They're
really
criminals.
he's
Criminals.
he's a racketeer.
Yeah. Tell us about the unindicted co-conspirator status of the organization CAIR. Is this the same organization? And I want you to answer this, please, David. We deal with CAIR groups all around the country, and they all say to us, oh, we CAIR of Florida, we CAIR of California, we don't have unindicted co-conspirator status. That's only Washington, D.C.
Right.
Can you address that issue and tell me, are you driving these guys nuts or what?
Yeah, well, there's no question that we're all driving them nuts. You drive them nuts, I do. In our litigation representing the former CAIR clients, they're looking at millions of dollars in judgment. And if they don't pay the judgment, once I get it, I will take possession of their intellectual property, meaning their name, their website. I'll take possession of their building. And they know we're capable of doing that. So they certainly are under the gun. But let me answer the questions in the right order. Remember one thing, and CJ raised the right question, and that is the Islamophobia campaign is in fact a foreign agent operation. It is run out of and driven by the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which are all the Muslim states in the Middle East, essentially, and so forth. And the UAE is paying for it. Where do you think that UAE embassy, why would an embassy give money to an American Muslim civil rights organization? It's an Islamophobia campaign to change U.S. policy. That's a foreign agent. That's a violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act because CAIR has not registered.
Ooh.
Now, as to the unindicted co-conspiracy label, keep in mind that what CAIR now tells us is that they've gone to the courts. In fact, they've written this in that report.
Yeah.
They claim that they've gone to the courts and that label has been expunged. That is false. It is a lie.
Yeah.
It says that
What
on
happened
their
was
Wikipedia page.
the Department of Justice labeled CAIR and the individuals, Omar Ahmed and so forth, as unindicted co-conspirators, a whole bunch of Muslim Brotherhood front groups. Now, they did it publicly. Normally, the Department of Justice will do it under seal. Only the judge and the parties get to see it. The evidence was introduced, including the famous Philadelphia hotel surveillance, where they were pretending to be Sama, which is Hamas written backwards,
Right.
and happens to mean sister in Arabic. But they were talking about creating this Muslim Brotherhood civilizational jihad network. And there was lots of other evidence tying CAIR to the Muslim Brotherhood Hamas front group, as a front group. They went to the federal district court judge who heard the Holy Land trial and found, the jury convicted all the defendants 20 to 65 years. And they said, Your Honor, this was a violation of our due process to name us publicly, and we want you to expunge it.
Right.
Judge Salas wrote an opinion that he originally put under seal. We didn't get to see it right away. But what did he say? He said, you're right. Your due process rights were violated because they named you publicly. You couldn't defend yourself. This is normally done under seal. That's not fair. However, even though the federal government violated your due process rights, there is more than sufficient evidence, and he went through it, to tie you to Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. No, sir, I will not expunge you. Listen.
Wow.
Wow.
CAIR didn't go on appeal, but the one of the other Muslim
Nate,
Brotherhood
I think it was
organizations,
Nate. I think it was
North
Nate.
American Islamic Trust did, went on appeal to the Fifth Circuit, made the same argument. Our due process rights were violated. We want this expunged. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit said, yes, we agree. Your due process rights were violated. Expunge, no siree. We're going to leave Judge Salas's opinion in place. You are an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest criminal terrorism financing case in the history of the United States. End of discussion. So when you and I name CAIR as a Hamas Muslim Brotherhood criminal front group. If that were in the slightest way false, they could sue our pants off for defamation.
Right.
They will not sue our pants off for defamation because in this country, truth is a defense.
Well, if they sue us, we're coming at you. Let me tell you right now.
And,
You know.
and I'll
He
be,
says,
I'll,
"Oh,
I'll
great,
cover your
another
legal
client who
backside
can't
pro
pay."
bono
Talk.
any day of the week.
What was that?
I said I will cover your legal backside any day of the week
Well,
pro bono.
we appreciate that. So, folks, at 30 minutes after the hour, 5 o'clock on the East Coast, we have David Yerushalmi from the American Freedom Law Center. He and Rob Muse run this civil rights First Amendment firm to represent people whose rights have been violated in any capacity, and fighting against the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, against their effort to ban people like us and all the folks that are out there trying to tell the truth about Islamic jihad and those problems. And in particular, last week, under a lot of hullabaloo, the Council on American Islamic Relations, for those of you just jumping in your automobiles now at the bottom of the hour, listening on the radio, the Council on American Islamic Relations released a 162-page document naming 60-something organizations. I think it's 37 inner core organizations, and then 30-something outer core organizations that make up the totality of the brain trust, the activism trust of what we would call the counter-jihad, ideological counter-jihad movement, what they call the Islamophobia movement. And David, they point in this 162-page document. Your name, I think if we did a Google search on your name in their document, it would blow the computers. Your name is like every other line. American law for American courts, David Yerushalmi, on and on and on. A lot of hullabaloo last week. We have on the screen now legislating fear, Islamophobia, and its impact in the United States. They had their press conference. Last Friday, we revealed some of the press conference, part one. Part two, we were going to deal with the publication. Then we see the article that David produced on CAIR CAIR being a criminal entity, a criminal syndicate laundering money. And then the Daily Caller's companion article, which revealed some of the documents that we have now. That's where we are at, folks. And let's take the cookies down to the lower shelf, David. Our discussion here is of interest to many, many people worldwide. But for the average guy in the street, the guy who gets up, just wants to go to work, he wants to just take care of his family, what is the relevance of anything we're talking about to that individual, just a regular old good old American? What's the relevance of this subject today?
I think Diana West's most recent book, American Betrayal, says it all. If you want to understand the threat from CAIR and the Muslim Brotherhood globally and especially here in the United States, is that it is able to insinuate itself into social, legal, political, cultural, educational institutions and organizations in a way that looks benign. It looks perfectly legitimate. But in reality, what they're doing is they're pursuing a dedicated and focused strategy to undermine the very freedoms and liberties that we fight for day in and day out. And we saw that in the communist era. And that's what Diana West's new book really exposes. This is not a new strategy. It's simply a new group of organizations. Instead of Marxist and communist and Stalinist, it's Muslim Brotherhood, Islamist, Sharia faithful, Al-Qaeda types. You don't have to have a gun to destroy this country. And indeed, I would argue that guns will never destroy this country. It is rather our apathy and a dedicated stealth operation to destroy us from within.
All right, we have a couple of questions before we let you go. We have an anxious group here that have some questions for you. CJ, you go first.
Okay. Hi, thank you very much. I guess my main question is, I do have some technical questions, but my main question is, we have an organization that should be investigated by various arms of the federal government. And instead, this very same organization is advising the federal government as to how we should conduct our relations with Muslims in the United States, and advising them on terrorism, police procedures, legal procedures at the state, local, federal level, in schools, in the school boards in all the counties in the country. How does that happen? How do we get one arm of the federal government to stop freely associating with this organization and get the other arm to start investigating and jailing and shutting down this organization?
Good question.
Well, that's a good question. I think the easy and most obvious answer is when you have a government as big as we have, oversized, where it's literally regulating every aspect of our lives, there is no way in the world that you can have any kind of enforced coherence, because you can have individuals in the same organization that want one thing and others in the other do exactly the opposite. For example, the FBI, having reviewed its own evidence and the evidence in the Holy Land Foundation trial, came out publicly several years ago and issued a directive to all of its field offices. There shall be no liaisoning with CAIR in our Muslim outreach efforts. The only time you can deal with CAIR is if you're investigating a crime and they have information relative to the crime.
Exactly.
You cannot liaison with them. After several congressmen and others complained that this was not being enforced, or it was being violated
blatantly,
blatantly, the IG, the Inspector General of the Department of Justice, just issued a report after a year or so of investigation and found that was exactly the case. For example, the LA office and the special agent in charge of the LA office simply said, screw you. My agents will come to me and talk to me about liaisoning with CAIR, which I will permit. They will not listen to any national directive.
Wow.
So if the FBI cannot control its own subordinates, how in the world is the FBI coordinating with the Homeland Security, who's coordinating with the IRS? I'll give you another quick example. During the 2008-2010 period, when the IRS and Lois Lerner were denying and procrastinating giving C3 recognition to charities, right? The whole Tea Party, pro-Israel groups that were being discriminated against. What happened? CAIR did not file any tax returns for 08, 09, and 010. Nothing. They didn't report any of their millions of dollars.
For 3 years, they didn't do any
3
reporting.
Years. What happened?
Wait. Before you tell us what happened, you deposed these guys, and I'm sure somewhere in the deposition you said, how come you didn't file your tax returns? What'd they say?
And they mumbled something like, it was a mistake.
Clerical error.
Sharia finance.
And, I mean, there was no valid explanation. How do you not file something?
But look how quickly the U.S. government restored it. You can go online and check yourself if they were filed. But what happened?
Exactly.
Automatically, the IRS, if you don't, as a charity, you don't file 3 consecutive years, you lose your status. Right. So their lobbying organization, which is a 501c4, lost its status. Their charitable organization, CAIR Foundation, which we've talked about here, lost its status. And so in 2012, they reapplied for their C3, CAIR Foundation. Now, you would think the IRS, which is giving the Tea Party trouble for no reason, would look at an organization that couldn't file its tax returns for 3 consecutive years with a little more care. What did they do? They wrote a letter and they said, you say you're CAIR Foundation and you point to this website, but you're never mentioned. It only talks about this other organization, the 1994 organization. And what's the relationship between the 2 organizations? Do you have separate bank accounts and separate employees? Dira Al-Khalili, who's the general counsel of CAIR and who I also deposed in this litigation, answered the question of the IRS like this. I mean, you couldn't make heads or tails out of it. She'd say one thing in one sentence and contradict herself in the very next sentence. That should have raised every red flag in the book. They should have stopped the application process. They should have done an audit. We want to see your tax returns for 3 years. What did they do? Stamped, approved.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, Friends of the
Hang on,
Muslim
hang on, hang on,
Brotherhood, Friends of the White House.
Hang on, we're fighting the clock here now. I don't know if you did this, but I think it needs to be done to follow a Freedom of Information Act, a FOIA, to find out what conversation CAIR had with the IRS to secure that, because I have a C3 and I'm very we file every year, but I mean, you don't want to lose that because you may never get it back. Has anybody filed a FOIA to find out the communication? Because follow the money. How'd they fast track a bogus organization that's a criminal syndicate and get approval? There's got to be money or something floating around. Anybody file a FOIA to find out what the communication was between the two entities?
Well, we did a FOIA, and that's how we got the information in terms of Nadira Al-Khalili's answer or non-answer to the IRS. The fascinating thing is that non-answer seemed to satisfy.
Oh, man.
What
Because
should
they
have
got a
been
directive.
a full-scale investigation.
They got a directive.
You had an organization that was not filing and was clearly answering in false and disingenuous ways, and the IRS, when it was saying no to the Tea Party, simply said yes. So you want to understand how it is that the government can behave this way? I believe that one thing is clear. There are many within the Obama administration that embrace the Muslim Brotherhood as the so-called moderate Islamist.
Right.
And that's why Obama sided with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and really still has.
Yeah, in Syria.
There are those within the government who know, the prosecutors on the ground, the FBI agents with the gumshoes, they know that CAIR is a Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization, but they have no policy-making ability. So what happens? The policymakers at the top get in bed with CAIR, and those at the bottom are forced to follow in tow.
It's just like the arrangement with the military right now, isn't it?
It is very similar to that organization we've spoken about in our first expose last Friday, the La Cosa Nostra. They operate on a very similar basis. Mark, I know you have a question, and then Imam Abdullah.
Yes, Tom,
I only asked to make it brief because I'm running out of time here.
Okay. We're going to have Mark ask a question, and then our resident imam, we have a Sunni imam on board with us. He may have a comment or two. Do you like Mr. David?
I could not hate one man any more than this one.
Okay, Mark, you had a question.
Yeah, I want to go back to, I went to the GuideStar report, and just to show you it was verification that it seemed kind of funny. They say, "Let's CAIR Foundation Inc., also known as CAIR Council on American Islamic Relations." They make no distinction on their corporate forms. Plus, on their total revenues and expenses, they list them as having $4.7 million of total revenue and only $1.3 million of expenses. And I was wondering, in this kind of symbiotic relationship, if this same type of structural arrangement happens with ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, or do you suspect it, or what's the links between ISNA and CAIR, and how embedded are they in that same type of money laundering scenario?
We haven't done a specific drill down. We, of course, know that ISNA, NATE, MSA, all the alphabet soup of acronyms that were planned at that Philadelphia meeting in '93. Remember, they literally spoke about creating a web of these so-called legitimate front groups to pursue different agenda, and they wanted one in the kind of civil liberties propaganda arena, and that was CAIR. Mm-hmm. We do know, however, that NATE, as an unindicted co-conspirator as well, which is the North American Islamic Trust, owns many of the mosques that were purchased by the Saudis on behalf of the Muslim Brotherhood throughout the United States to spread Sharia Islamist doctrine. So would I doubt that they have the same kind of financial labyrinth? No, I wouldn't. Do I know it? No, I don't. CAIR seems to be, the real leader in this group when it comes to the legal and financial shenanigans, although we don't know how much money these other organizations are taking in from the Gulf.
All right, David, we're going to let you go. What's that? What do you have there? Nihad Awad. Oh, what about salaries? Did you find out how much these guys make, Nihad Awad and all these other guys?
The truth is, they don't show a lot, which says something. In other words, for example, their in-house counsel was paid like $65,000. And if you actually watch them at work, you understand why they're only paid $65,000. I mean, I'd like to claim to be the world's greatest litigator, and I might on a good day or after a scotch or two. But the truth is, when compared to their counsel, anybody looks good.
And what is the status of your case right now, the one representing the 5 defendants?
Right now, the court has our motion for summary judgment. It has their formal motion for CAIR's motion for summary judgment. Their motion has no chance. And really, the judge is going to be deciding any day now. It's been pending since the end of January. Just how liable they are, and then the question is going to be damages.
All right, well, if David Yerushalmi winds up owning the CAIR office building in D.C.,
We're moving the studio.
we're moving in. Remember us, okay? We need a D.C. studio.
Yeah, we'll broadcast that of the Department of Irony.
Exactly. Leave, you have to go now, we know. Leave with a word to the viewers and listeners. We have a lot of activists that follow our show. What specifically can they do to save the Republic in light of this subject today?
I'll tell you one thing, and it deals more than just with the threat from Sharia and Islam. It also deals with a threat to transnational. The entire Islamophobia report CAIR produced is called Legislating Fear. Why? Because they were focusing on this little policy tool that we created, the American Laws for American Courts. That is the best way today. Why? Because it's a law that protects us from offensive, unconstitutional foreign laws and foreign judgments from being insinuated into this country, and that will include the Sharia law and Sharia judgments. But more importantly, every time it's introduced, like in Ford, it's been introduced for a couple of years, and every year it's defeated through kind of parliamentary mechanisms. But even in its defeat, it generates enormous amount of public discussion about what is Sharia, what is Islam, is it a threat? That kind of open public discourse is the best way to shine a light on this beast. Because what people do when they hear that stuff is the next time they open up their newspaper and they read about the Muslim Brotherhood and the Sharia killings and the malls in Nairobi or Nigeria, they begin to put the dots together themselves. And they realize, what's driving all these people? Why do Nigerian Muslims murder innocents, and the Pakistanis do, and the Arabs do, and American Muslims in Boston? What ties all these people together? And then they hear this discussion, Sharia, the threat doctrine, and they begin to realize themselves what ties these disparate groups together. What's the common thread? And that common thread and threat is Sharia.
All right.
So what they can do is they can go out there and lobby for it, fight for it, join Tom Trento on the streets, and get this thing passed in Florida.
We'll do it.
That sounds
All
good
right.
to me.
Thank you. Now we got to let him go now. David, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much. Keep us posted.
We'll see you, okay? Stay in touch. Wow, amazing stuff. And he was only going to stay like 20 minutes, a half hour or so.
Yeah, we're really lucky.
He's in transit. But at 49 minutes after the hour, after 5 o'clock, you were the beneficiary of an amazing analysis of the inner workings, the accounting, the fiscal inner web of confusion, the labyrinth of deception and deceit taking place CAIR. There's 18 million different little CAIR organizations and names, but you were the recipient, the beneficiary of an excellent analysis of the individual that sat across the desk deposing the various entities.
We
Nihad
didn't
Awad,
know
others.
that David was going to be our guest until late last night, and we didn't do a lot to promo it. But for those that don't know, David Yerushalmi is essentially the primary author of all existing ALAC bills that have been passed and are active. Right. So this man is he's a living legend in the legal society.
Well, he also, I don't know if you can see in the picture there, he's an Orthodox Jewish person. He has studied in Egypt.
Drives him crazy too.
He speaks Arabic. He speaks Hebrew. He reads and writes Arabic. He's an expert on the shariah.
Right.
And he's despised and reviled by.
And we love him.
He's the most hated man by any.
I think his stock went up after the
by,
show today.
By any Islamic group, organization, civil rights group, whatever you want to call him, he is probably the most hated man in the world by those organizations.
Could I ask you guys a question?
Let me say one comment on that. Yeah, he's one of the Team B 19 authors, and we have all of us write each day on whatever, commenting on whatever is going on, like Nairobi right now,
Good grief.
and. David, somebody will say, yeah, it's pretty bad. Somebody, a very distinguished individual, pretty bad. We need to develop a 3-part plan and respond in this capacity. And then David's missive comes because he just said something, and then 2 minutes later you get, 1,000 words, and you need a Greek and Latin lexicon to interpret the various philosophers he's tied together. And the analysis he's done through Greco-Roman and Enlightenment philosophy to the point where we are today with a bunch of Arabic thrown in, it's just the way he is. He's not trying to impress anybody.
Right.
He's a brilliant individual who's a phenomenal litigator. I'm glad he's on our side. You are screwed, Nihad Awad, let me tell you. There he is, yes.
Yeah, my question for you guys is this, because this is not the first time this has happened to CAIR or other groups like CAIR. Why are they so ignorant of our American system of justice that they persist in getting embroiled in these lawsuits where they know even if they win, they're going to have to fork over all the goods in discovery, and they never settle
We're
up
going
front.
to D.C. We're
They
going to have
don't
a studio
settle
in
up
D.C.
front.
Hubris.
Why is that?
Yeah, Mark, yeah.
One word answer. Hubris. They are arrogant. They think they can get away with everything, especially when they have the support of the current administration. Obama praising ISNA, who is, you think CAIR is the snake? Well, ISNA's the head of the snake. It's complete hubris. They think they can get away with anything. They've corrupted the IRS, obviously, to fast track organization who has unindicted co-conspirator tag on them, where they're being deposed in court. I mean, come on. What country do we live in?
It's also a total lack of respect for our U.S. constitutional laws, okay? They are here to replace those laws with Sharia law. So what do they care if they trample them on their way there?
Well, yeah, but according to them, Sharia is compatible with the Constitution. You're forgetting.
So what was your answer, Tom?
Well, there's a couple levels. The hubris is the fruit of the various levels. Nihad Awad, who is one of the subject entities for today, he's the founder, one of the founders of CAIR with Omar Ahmed, and he's the executive director of CAIR as we speak today.
And the foundation. So he's in charge of both.
Yeah, it's like this. This is CAIR. This is CAIR. Now, if you don't look here, over here is CAIR. There's CAIR here, and here's a CAIR over here.
It's a total shell game.
But he was born in Amman, Georgia, in a Palestinian... Jordan. A Palestinian refugee camp. Nihad Awad was. So he was born in Jordan in a Palestinian refugee camp. Now, if you've been to the Middle East, you understand that whatever the retail price is, that means nothing. Okay, whatever the facts are, they mean nothing. It's whatever you can negotiate. So you're always negotiating. You're always trying to get the upper hand. So there's coming out of an Arabic tribal mentality. There is negotiating for the superior position. That's just as a behavioral practice in the Arab world. Add to that infuse that with the theological doctrine of supremacy that Islam gives you. Not only do I try to get the upper hand as a behavioral practice and experience, but I am better than all of these people.
Right.
Then when you come here and you
Shocker.
are investigated by the FBI, you're an unindicted co-conspirator, you're a criminal by the world's perception.
And you're still treated like a player.
And you
you're
have
honored.
millions and millions of dollars being funneled your way through these, corrupt. Well, that's the way we do.
That's
this
where
is
the hubris comes. You know,
And
hubris
all the
is
major,
super pride.
cultural, social, political institutions of your new host country have rolled over for you.
You got you're going to get the.
You've
feeling
got the
like you're-
media,
like
you've got
you're-
academia,
It's
you've got the government elites.
It's that Superman complex. You think
Yeah.
nothing
You
can
really
stop you
think
now.
you're Superman.
You
Yeah.
really do. You think that, and it's that same. You ask that same question. Why do cops beat a person in the middle of the street with a helicopter flying over? Well, you get that supreme power where you think you can do anything.
Yeah.
And when you start thinking about this rationale of why that is, it really starts to make a lot of sense.
Mr.
For any of our policemen audience members,
No,
Yeah, we're only talking about the bad cops.
No, I'm talking about like the Rodney King thing. When you see a police helicopter flying over your head, and you're beating on a guy, come on. I mean, you have that power thing go through your head, and you become uncontrolled.
Well, it's a little.
Well, let's
I
just
understand
ask
the,
this.
The analogy.
Is this new revelation
Yes,
of the
very good
money laundering? Is this going to be the kryptonite to Nihad Awad and CAIR? Yes
they're
or
going
no?
down.
You think so?
I think they're starting to go down. Ever since Sisi took out Morsi, as fast as the Arab Spring happened, it seems like there is an avalanche working against the Brotherhood. And I think this is the beginning of the end. This week has been incredible. From the Brotherhood being banned in Egypt to this stupid report they came out with, they're worried about funding. Guess what? You're laundering money. And let me tell you something.
Maybe that's why the report came out.
The hubris.
Because
Getting
I
back
think it
to
may
the
have been
hubris.
preemptive, yeah.
That's why.
This is such a poorly constructed money laundering scheme. I mean, this is something a third grader
Talk about the
could
cookie
do.
jar.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in my red cookie jar, and put it, and then I'll switch it to my blue cookie jar.
Well, let me
this
suggest
is the most
this.
Unsophisticated. They have a lot to learn from the cocaine
we got
cowboys.
30
Let me
seconds.
suggest
30
this really
seconds, real
quickly,
fast.
okay? The timing of this report, I think this report was put out when it was because they knew that this information about the money laundering was going to be made public,
be
and they wanted to
preemptive.
get in front of it with
Makes
this
sense.
Islamophobia report to say, hey, don't look at that, because the reason why anybody is talking about that is because they're Islamophobes, and therefore it doesn't count.
Yeah, well, I think they miss the
They
boat
think
on
they
that
can greenwash it.
All right, here's what we're going to do, folks, because we got a lot of material
Yikes.
to deal with.
Busy
Today
week,
was
yeah.
part 2. Friday we did part 1 of our expose on CAIR, criminal organization. And today was part 2 with David Yerushalmi.
Yerushalmi.
He hasn't
Yerushalmi.
done enough work for you that you owe him the right enunciation.
Then part 2 was today with an excellent analysis by David. And tomorrow we're going to continue. Claire Lopez tomorrow on the IG's report reprimanding the FBI for liaisoning with CAIR. It sucks to be CAIR. See ya. Bye.
Thank you.